Welcome to your weekly Open the Door to Tai Chi lesson. In the 10 essentials of Tai Chi, we can't really choose a favorite. We need to be able to think of all of them. But for a short few weeks here, we are going to focus on essential number 7. Obviously, we focused on rooted in the feet last week. This week, we're going to focus on the next piece, which is stabilized through the legs. Remember, essential number 7 is upper and lower follow one another. And it's fleshed out in the idea of your movement is rooted in your feet, stabilized through the legs, commanded by the waist, and expressed in the hands. So today we're going to focus on stabilization through the legs. Now, what does that mean? Let's just do pheasant stands side to side. Okay, and I want you to think about the legs. Now, as you do that, there might be some instability. Like I just had in my right side was that very first one. I was like, oh, that's not stabilized through the legs. I have to focus on being strong through the legs, but we also have to add the idea of essential number 6 to this idea of stabilized through the legs. What's essential number 6? Use consciousness, not strength. So we don't want to think about being as tight through our legs as possible, because that's not Tai Chi. We don't want our muscles to be contracted and tight. We want them to be relaxed. This is not a contradiction. You might think it is, but you can still be stabilized through the legs and not have to be tight, concentrating on being as muscly as possible. You still want to use consciousness, not strength, with your motion. So going back to your pheasant stands, as you do this, try to relax both legs, the stabilizing leg and the leg that's up. Let those muscles relax. But now think about a column going through your body, right? You have your columns going through your shoulders, through your hips. Is that helping you be rooted and stabilized? Yes. That whole idea of our columns is important to remember as we're stabilizing. So now let's do kick, smash, and box the ears. Think about being stable through the legs. Anytime that we're one-legged like this, we have to be stable through those legs. Now, the idea of balance and stabilization they're connected, they're related, but really stable is a much more complex idea than just balanced, right? We still need to understand how to be stable through our movement and not just be balanced standing on one leg. Movement balance is stabilization. Let's think about repulse the monkey. Going backwards, being stabilized through the legs. If we think about the idea of the column and our substantial and insubstantial, with our left foot at this point being the one that's going to move, it's insubstantial. You should be stable through that right leg, but to force the issue, do a kick before you finish your repulse the monkey. Now the same thing with this side, kick and step back. Now I don't want you to forget about your feet just because we're thinking about legs. Think about that toe to heel, your tripod in your Repulse the Monkey. The idea of stabilized through the legs, being stable, also is we have to think about are our stances stable? When we do our brush knee, are we stepping out like this? This is not a stable stance. Even if I feel my legs solid, I can be easily pushed over, right? That's not stabilized through the legs. Your stance, meaning it should be wide enough to be strong. It should be in a good position, not so wide or so long that, this is actually draining energy and using a lot of muscly force. Whereas I can step out wide enough, long enough to be in a very natural, solid stance. So let's do our brush knee. Going forward, thinking about, am I stepping in a wide enough stance? Am I lowering my center of gravity enough that I'm stable throughout each of these movements? Stabilized through the legs, but not letting those muscles cramp. You still need to be soft and using consciousness, not strength. Remember the saying that I've told you before, the arms of someone doing Tai Chi are like iron within cotton. Okay, same thing with the legs. They're strong, but they're still very soft and relaxed. Let's add a kick to our brush knee. Right, your first brush knee as you step out, that's a normal, the way we do it. But now what I want you to do as you move forward is, this leg is insubstantial now, my right leg is, I need to kick before I finish the brush knee. Now if I can kick with my left and then finish the brush knee. That might mess a little bit with your coordination again, because it is kind of stopping right in the middle of that rotation. But it forces the issue of the stabilization, making sure that you are stabilized through your legs. And it forces you to think about, where am I going to land that foot so that I have a good, solid stance? Let's look at wave hands like clouds. But this time, because the name wave hands like clouds, this is wave hands, right? I want you to be thinking about your legs. So we're just going to do the steps. So don't let your hands do the movement. If you step, now feel this stabilization through your left leg. Let that right leg become empty. And now stepping, letting that right leg now be stable, step. You're going to have to do your rotation, which, as we will work on next week, you're actually focusing on the dantian as well. But now what I want you to do is think about the legs. Think about that substantial and insubstantial. Try to relax the legs as they empty and fill with each movement. So now let's add the hands, but don't forget about that feeling in your legs. And ideally, what this focus should do is truly slow your movement down, which we know is also one of the 10 essentials. The very last one, seeking stillness in motion. One more. Now let's do pushing chi. Again, think about your stance, making sure that you're not too narrow, making sure that it's just wide enough and low enough. Rooted in the feet, stabilized through the legs, commanded by the waist, and expressed through the hands. Now, as we focus on, again, the power coming against your opponent, that energy coming against the opponent, think about how much power is in your legs against your opponent. Stabilized through the legs, using that energy. Good. Bring the right foot forward, pushing chi. One more. So now as you practice being stabilizing through the legs, using stabilization in the idea of your legs, I do want you to think of it and practice separate movements. Practice your kick, smash, and box the ears. Practice pheasant stands. Practice repulse the monkey with kicks and brush knee with kicks. Really separate out the movements of the form, thinking about being stabilized through the legs. Of course, it's important to put it into the form, but as you're starting to learn how to fully integrate this essential, it is important to separate the movements first before we integrate them and put them all together into the flow of the form.